I need you to stop doing something for me. Okay. This is what you need to stop doing. You need to stop telling people to work, to exercise more and to read more and to go on walks and to take essential oils when they're feeling like this. You have to stop telling people to do that, right? Like that is something that we do because it helps, but now we're live. Okay. See what I mean? Like this is what I'm dealing with. Hey everybody. If you're coming into the Zoom webinar, say hello, let us know where you're from. If you're watching on Facebook, same thing. Say hello, let us know where you're from. I'm Nick Baldwin, co-founder LabCoatAgents. I really appreciate you guys are here with us today for a really special webinar. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and I've got some really great, awesome panelists with us today, all dealing with, the struggles of keeping positive through difficult times. And so I want them to introduce themselves. So we'll start with Brindley.
Oh, thank you so much, Nick, and thank you for having me today. It's an honor to be here. My name is Brindley Tucker, and I, more importantly than anything, I am a daughter. I was raised by a single mom, only child. I've also been in recovery for 9 years. I think it's important to share that as well. I'm just excited to be here on a professional level. I am a business owner. I'm a female business owner. I have a team of 25, and we run across 4 different departments. So I have a lot going on and a lot that I manage and juggle throughout the day. And I am just honored and grateful to be here today among all of you, and what great company we have here.
Awesome. And Andrea?
Yes, I am Andrea Madison. I am a mother of 4 incredible humans. I still can't believe that. 4, there's a lot of them.
4.
Wow. And I run the Keller Williams Market Center here in Glendale, Arizona, and have a real estate team as well. Been doing this for about 11 years, coaching agents and selling houses.
Awesome. And Carly jumped on last minute. We're so grateful for her because Harrow wasn't able to. He had a death in the family, so our prayers go out to him. But thankfully, Carly Oxenrider was able to join us. So Carly, introduce yourself.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me. Love to be in this company. So Carly Oxenrider, I am a agent in the St. Simons, Georgia Market Center and in the Jacksonville, Florida Market Center, former team leader. I'm a coach and consultant and a market center investor. I have been in the business for about 11 years and just love this topic and so excited to be a part of it.
Awesome. Well, we're happy that you're here on such short notice. Thanks so much. I'm Nick Baldwin. I introduced myself previously, but just a little bit about me. I live in Michigan. I was a team leader for KW Office. I was regional tech trainer for Michigan, Northern Ohio, co-founder of LabCoatAgents. I have 2 crazy kids, 9 and 6. I've been in real estate for about 15 years, originally from New Jersey. And so this is going to be a very conversational discussion. I have talking points in my head, but I didn't want to write them down because I wanted to be, as organic as possible. And so what we're going to talk about is mental health. Whether you have a clinically diagnosed and you're living with some sort of depression or anxiety or ADHD, all of the above right here, and how you deal with that, right? What you do regularly to get yourself into a positive mindset. And I also want to make sure that we have a clear understanding of what the difference is between being anxious and having anxiety, being sad and depressed and having depression, and just being flustered and having ADHD. Those are all very different things. So I want to tell some personal stories, as much as you guys are comfortable talking about, because we all have experiences. Brindley, do you want to just kind of tell us about you have a great story, and obviously tell us as much as you want. And you and I have talked a lot about it, but the last 18 months have also been very difficult for people, probably more difficult than usual. But what do you struggle with daily, and why do you struggle with, with those issues?
Yeah, so I guess a lot of my story, I was raised in an environment where a lot of our family members had substance abuse problems that stemmed from mental illness. So I grew up with a lot of it, surrounded by a lot of it, and then battled depression and anxiety in high school and in college. And where my mental illness led me was not to the healthy ways of daily maintenance, but to the unhealthy ways of daily maintenance. And I started drinking very heavily in my 20s to stop what was going on in my head, to stop what was going on in my everything, basically, that I didn't want to feel. I would just numb, and I would numb with drugs and alcohol. And, my story is that would continue through my 20s. It would cost me jobs. It would put me in not the best legal situations. And I went to my first family reunion with Keller Williams in 2012. And when I walked in, it was in Orlando. And when I walked into that convention center, all I heard was God, family, and business. And everyone was happy. And for what I could see at that time, because what I was judging them against was me, and I wasn't. And I realized that everything that I was filling this God-sized hole in my heart with, the drugs, the alcohol, to stop the depression, to get out of bed in the morning, right? Just to get going, the anxiety, to stop the feelings of judgment and impending doom, and all of these things could be taken care of in different ways. And I came back from that family reunion, and I cried out to God, and I said, I don't want to live like this anymore, but I don't want to die, and I need help. And I've always said that I'm not judgmental of who your God is, as long as it's not you and you don't think it's you. But I believe that my God whispers, and then he speaks, and then he yells, and then he roars. And my roar came on May 27th. It's kind of emotional because it's this month of 2012. I drank a whole lot to not have to feel, and I made a U-turn in front of a motorcycle. And for 2 days, I thought he was dead, and I thought I was going to prison for the rest of my life. And I truly believe that it's by the grace of God that man didn't die that day, because I would be more useful here than I would be in prison. And he didn't die. And I immediately went into recovery. I'll celebrate 9 years in recovery at the end of this month. And it's been a 9-year journey. Because not only is it, drinking and drugging, and if you're choosing to use those things to numb something else, that's just a symptom, right? It's not the root cause. And I think recovery was the way that I've gotten to the root cause of it. And then obviously the things that I do on a daily basis to maintain my mental health, so that I don't go back out into a world of masking and numbing and dealing with it. Because I still have to deal with life on life's terms. Just because I have, some ailments, and I was diagnosed with adult onset epilepsy. So on top of some of the mental challenges that I have, I also have seizures, and I have to manage that as well. So that's a little bit about my journey and kind of where I am today.
Yeah, I want to mention, a lot of people, they see this Brindley who, not that you don't have it all together, because you do in certain areas, right? We all have it all together. I have
pajama pants on. I mean, I don't have it all together. I mean, let's be real. It might look like that from the waist down.
I don't want to insinuate that you don't have it together. A lot of people look at you and they think you got your head on straight, when really you don't know. They always say check on your strong friends first. That's a tongue twister, right? Because when you're in a leadership position, when you put yourself out there, you have a team of 25 with your company, just having a company that big, doing what you're doing, and still putting a smile on your face is extremely hard. And it can be very, very lonely to do that, right? And you don't hear enough leaders in the world or our industry speaking up, right? They're always smiling. When I was a team leader, I was told, as soon as you open your office door, put that smile on your face. And you have to, right? You can't walk around a brokerage or a corporation or an organization looking like you're upset. So it can be extremely difficult, and people don't understand. What do you mean you're sad and depressed? What do you mean you're depressed? You have everything you could ever wanted, and none of that stuff matters. I have everything I want, doesn't matter, right? Because it's something you can't control. So I think it's great when people speak out about what they've been through, because you'll never, like when you first told me that story, I was like, what? No way, right? Like you would never imagine that. But let me ask you this. What do you do on a regular basis, to just stay mentally healthy and positive? You have like a routine or?
It's interesting that you say that, because during the pandemic, a lot of you saw that when we all went into lockdown, I got very, Carly, I put myself out there. I was very much on Zooms and putting content and putting value. And I would get phone calls at night and they would say, are you really that happy? Like, is that really who you are and what you're going through? And I said, actually it is. And they were like, well, how are you doing it? And honestly, I've been taught in anything that happens that when the stuff hits the fan, first you turn off the fan, right? You shut the fan off, and then you get into acceptance, lean on God, and get into serving others. And so I know today that if I get into acceptance, meaning what is the worst thing that's going to happen? I have to take myself there. I'm going to get there anyway. So I might as well speed up the process and get myself there sooner so that I can get into acceptance about where I'm really at. Then I'm going to lean on God or my faith. Again, I don't care who your God is, as long as you don't think it's you, right? And then I'm going to get into the service of others, because I know that when I help someone else, I immediately feel better. I know when I'm giving value to someone else. So a lot of people thought that I was self-promoting and I was putting myself out there to advertise myself. And actually, that's not what I was doing at all. I was self-medicating. I was giving myself what I needed, which is to help others. And then today, Nick, I'll share with you, it might shock a lot of people. My alarm goes off at 5:30 in the morning. I don't get out of bed till 7 o'clock. I have a very solid routine. It is time blocked. It says rise and shine on my calendar. I read, I meditate, I pray, and I know I have to do all of those things before my day starts if I want to be in a good headspace throughout the rest of the day.
That's awesome. I love that. If Andrea or Carly, if you have any comments, obviously questions, on whoever is speaking, feel free to ask or say something.
I love that Brindley said that about in the mornings. Because I believe like it was a gut check for all of us last year when we were waking up, at 5:30 and knew we were going to be parked in front of our computer serving others for 9-10 hours a day. Mm-hmm. And if you did not have that little bit of solace to be able to get your mind right, before we would jump on those calls first thing in the morning, it just didn't set your day in the right motion. And I've stayed in that habit. Thank goodness I'm not on Zoom for 9 hours a day anymore. However, I've kept that morning routine, and I see that as a silver lining that came out of last year.
Yeah, 100%. And it's interesting, Brindley, when you say, your alarm goes off at 5:30, but you don't get out of bed till 7. And, I love that you said that, because so many people are like, oh, alarm at 4:30, I'm up out of bed and I'm at the gym at 5. And it's like the second that alarm goes off, it's like grind. And, we put so much emphasis on when you get out of bed. Like my kids wake up before me. They're 9 and 6. And I go back to sleep for an hour. Like they always say, are you getting up with me? No, it's 5:30, it's 6 o'clock. I'm not getting up with you. I'm sleeping for another hour. Because I'm not planning to get up at 5 or even 6. 7 is great. Like 7, great. The kids, when they go back to school, I'm gonna have to get up a little bit sooner, but we put so much emphasis on what time we're awake, and we don't put enough emphasis on what we do with the time that we're awake, right?
I'm a better daughter. I'm a better leader. I'm a better friend when I take care of Brindley first. And, even there's 2 days a week that I do go to bar at 6 a.m. because I prefer to work out in the morning. Yet when I come home from that bar class, I take that hour back and I spend that hour in myself, reading, investing. So I do think there's a lot to be said to a morning, and Gary even teaches us that, you know, on page 308 of MREA is the energy plan, right?
Can you be a little more specific on what page and line and word it is?
It's my ops.
So
it's me.
Cool. Hey, Andrea, I want to go to you and just kind of talk a little bit about you, you know, and anything you want to tell us, any story that we should know, and how you deal with a lot of pressure, because you're a team leader and you run a sales team, team leader of a market center. I mean, we know that is everything's your fault, basically. If you're familiar with how team leader position, Carly knows. Me, Carly, and Andrea. Well, Carly and I got out. Andrea came back.
I'm still serving time.
She came back for more teacher.
Yeah, like she did a team leader job, left, and then decided she wanted to do it again. So she's crazier than us. But
so okay, let's talk about that. Let's that actually is a big part of my story. I wouldn't have left. I love this crazy job, and I think maybe it is because I have a little bit of that like all over the place ADD brain. I think there's so many different hats you can wear in this role, and so many different lives you can impact in different ways that it just keeps me energized. But the first time that I did this job, I went through some major personal stuff with my older kiddos. You know, I have a really high conflict divorce from my first ex, and that takes its toll on kids in a way that is just so damaging and so disheartening. And you don't realize it when you're in it, right? So a lot of times that mental health looks like rebellion from your kids, or misbehavior, or they're just not really acting like themselves. But we tend to, as parents, it's really easy to look at teenagers and think that it's behavioral. And sometimes it is. And a lot of times there's that underlying root of it being their anxiety or some mental health challenges that they're facing that we're not aware of. I was raised in a very, very conservative households growing up, our religious beliefs, and depression and anxiety weren't real. They were, you know, you could pray it away, or it's just all in your head, and your faith has to be bigger than that. And there's some truth to, I understand where that is coming from. I do. And I get that. But like Nick, like you were saying, there's a difference between being anxious in a moment and having anxiety. And then I've been diagnosed with OCD, and I thought that was the stupidest diagnosis for me, because if you know me, I'm a mess. Like, I think of OCD and I think you're like compulsively washing your hands 1,000 times and lining up everything in neat little rows for everything's neat and in order. And what I didn't know is that OCD is also very much linked to ruminating thoughts. So for me, it's obsessing on what I didn't do right or what I could have done better. And then I'll shame myself down into a hole with that ruminating thought, which I did not even know was an anxiety disorder, right? And so then that shows up in my kids, and I didn't know how to recognize it because I didn't even recognize it in myself. So all that to say, that first team leader role, I ended up having pretty much a mental breakdown, not because of the job, but because of where my life was going sideways. And you guys knew me at that point. Carly, you and I haven't met. Nick and Brindley and I are friends, and I can only imagine what it looked like from the outside if anybody was paying attention to it, because it wasn't me, and it looked like I was burning down my life, right? I had a dream job. I'm going to name drop. I was Ben Kinney's team leader. That was a huge deal for me. I moved my whole family to Washington because I wanted to work with Ben and put myself around that level of person and learning. And then my whole world fell apart, and it looked like I gave up on my sales team. I ruined relationships, and it wasn't my intention. I legitimately just couldn't function. I just couldn't get out of my own head about the challenges my kids were going through. And then how that played out into my marriage at the time and everything else in my life. And so it's funny, Brindley, you were at family reunion. I was at Mega Camp. 2018, I was at Mega Camp in front of the Capitol building, my friend Bethany and I had gotten these little scooters and we were riding around wreaking havoc on downtown Austin, and we were in front of the Capitol building and I was losing it. And it was at that moment I went, I am not okay and I need help. And I hopped off my little scooter and I called a psychiatrist and scheduled an appointment for when I got home, because I was thinking like, I am losing it. Like everything is unraveling and I'm the common thread. So I have to fix me, and I have to know, like, am I crazy? Am I losing it? Do I need to go into like lockdown? I don't know. And if that was what was suggested, I was willing to do whatever it took to get my life back on the rails, you know? And I did. I went and I got on some medication, and I think it was an overcorrect, because that took about a year to figure out the right balance, because it went too far, you know? So then I was a complete zombie for a while, and then had some really bad side effects from meds. So we had to try a lot of different things, and I had to be really open and really vulnerable. And I had to admit a lot of things about myself that I didn't like and still don't like. And I had to learn how to get to that place of acceptance, like Brindley said, because ultimately at the end of the day, what I was trying to do is control everything. And I didn't realize that's what I was trying to do. I was trying to smash everything through my filter of what I thought that it should look like, and then wondering why it was such a mess, because it doesn't fit, because this is reality. And here was my idea, and I'm trying to just smash it all through there. And getting to that place of acceptance was huge for me. And then now I've been able to completely course correct, have a good relationship with my kids, getting my life back, came back to Arizona, and now I'm back in the team leader role that I love, and we're doing great things out here. Sales team's going well. And it all got to that because I surrendered.
You know, Andrea, I think you bring up a really valid point though. I had a team member actually post a few days ago on Facebook about how she's been riddled with her anxiety over these last few weeks, and immediately here, and then there's a thread, right, of like 50 people commenting. So here I am at 10:30 at night Googling, how do you lead someone through anxiety? Like as a leader, how do you show up? And I stopped myself and I'm like, Brindley, you lead yourself, right? Like, but I think what's most important is that most people, when they're in it, don't know what they need. Like they can't see the forest from the trees. And so to just ask somebody, how can I help you? Or how can I support you? A lot of times they don't even know what to tell you. Right, Andrea?
Yeah, totally. I have so many people in my world that I could have reached out to and didn't know how. Well, I was trying to, but you can't communicate that when you're in the middle of something like that. Like you said, Brindley, you don't know what you need. You just know you need to stop spinning and unraveling, and yet how, right? It was to the point I didn't want to even be alive. I didn't want to even live. I didn't want to feel it anymore. And that was really what got me the wake up call of going. And that was the point where I was like, okay, that is not me. That is really not who I am. And I don't want to feel that way. And I'm not going to do that to my family and the people who love me and myself. So going and getting help was the hardest, best thing I ever did.
But it was also getting the right help.
Right?
As a coach, I have to be really careful that I know where my responsibility as a coach ends and where they need to go seek professional
right help. Exactly. That's being in ecology with the people that you lead, right? It's doing what's best for you, what's best for them, kind of what's best for the whole. And I think that's important too, that we know we're not professionals on this stuff. No. What works for me or works for Brindley or Nick or Carly isn't going to necessarily work for everyone. We're just sharing stories. So I definitely want to make sure we're clear on that.
Yeah. And, you said something important, like this doesn't just affect you. I mean, it affects everybody around you. Like I can't even tell you, like before I decided to get real help, I can't tell you how many times my wife was like, listen, if you don't go do this, like I'm out of here. Like, she's like, I love you, but I can't deal with these ups and downs, because they were severe, right? That's what depression does. Severe. One day or one moment, you're extremely happy. Yep. And then the next moment, you're the complete opposite. And she's like, I don't know what Nick I'm going to get from day to day or moment to moment. And listen, medication helps. And every medication is different for every person. Like Andrea, you said that it took about a year to find the right balance and the right medication, and it can. So finding that medication, doesn't instantly start to work. Luckily for me, it was rather quick, but it's not just the medication. Like for me, I have depression, anxiety, and ADHD. Once they figured out I had ADHD, like, oh my gosh, because that sets off the other two. Because if I have that and I don't know, the anxiety sets off, and then when you're anxious, you get upset, and then the depression kicks in. So the ADHD like drives it all. So as soon as they figure that out, it's like, oh my gosh, right? So much, it's like a lifesaver, literally. But the routine is extremely important. Like I have to do certain things every morning and every night in order to keep my brain at a place that's healthy. So yeah, Andrea, what are you doing throughout the day? Like Brindley has a very specific morning. Are there certain things that you're doing to keep your mind positive throughout the day?
I'm a reader. I read. And I'm fascinated by all things like psychology. This kind of stuff just fascinates me. So I read a lot about, I'm reading right now, I don't even remember who the author is, but it's called No Self, No Problem. And it's talking about the like neuropsychology and Eastern philosophy, sort of like, meditation and the kind of correlation between the Eastern philosophies and the way that the brain works. So I'm reading stuff like that right now, but it helps me to understand that feelings are real, but they're liars. Like just because your brain tells you something doesn't make it true. And it feels true because that voice in our head sounds like us, right? And it's who we trust. It is who we identify with. And so learning to separate ourselves from the narrative has been huge for me, and reading helps me to do that.
I think it's also important to acknowledge. So some of you, if you know me, I've been on a massive health journey. I've lost 40 pounds.
I was going to say, you look amazing. You jumped down here. I was like, that, like, seriously.
I decided
I found them, Brindley.
Yeah, you're so cute. And I never understood what being physically strong, how much it can help so many other areas of your life. And this time I decided to do something different. I decided to hire a professional, which I think we should all do, right? Because I only know what I know. And she's a root cause analysis nutrition. So we just found out last week that I have black mold inside of me.
What?
Yeah. Stocky.
Yeah. Wait, so black mold, like legit. We find in home inspections?
Yeah, like legit that you find in homes. And I grew
like
up in
stuff
Florida.
That will cancel a deal, like the canceling of the deal mold.
The deal mold, the canceling, the stocky, right? And
how?
Yeah. So, we went through a series of things over several months to try to take care of some health issues that I was having. We also wanted to get me off of as much seizure medication that I was on. And so we wanted to do that through some unconventional ways, and nothing was helping. I was losing weight, yet all of the hormonal things and all the other things that I was dealing with were still there. And so she said, wait, have you grown up in Florida your whole life? And I'm like, yeah, most of it, except for like 10 years when I left. And she said, I bet you have mold. And sure enough, we ran a lab and I have black mold. And that has been the root cause that has prevented me. It's caused a lot of because like as a woman also, right, we deal with hormones. Well, I like see red rum for a week out of the month. Like, you should die. And everybody around me will die. I mean, ask my employees. And that's not normal. Right? There's a lot of things that we deal with that we're already battling mental health, but then there's all these other things that we just think are normal, right? We think that you're supposed to do these certain things after you eat. It just happened. You wake up with a stuffy nose every morning. And what I've really learned through this process is that up here has its challenges, but this is all one piece. Mm-hmm. And if I'm not taking care of all of this, then it makes it a lot harder to take care of this. And, dopamine is a real thing. Endorphins are a real thing. And I can naturally get dopamine release and endorphins from doing certain things. Now, I am not saying that should be a substitute or that go work out and you'll be fine. No, that is in addition to the things that I'm doing to control my mental health. But I choose today to do as much as I can to have a happy, joyous, and free life and not be dead because of my head. Right?
Yeah.
100%, 100%. Well, I want to get back to that in a few minutes, but I want to go over to Carly. Hi, Carly.
Hi.
Thanks for being so patient and polite. Appreciate that.
You're so sweet.
Let's talk about you. You have a little bit of a different story, and feel free to share if you want. Share as much as you want, share as little as you want. We just connected. Well, we connected a while back, but the other day we were texting. Do we want to talk about that or no?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that Cruz would be totally fine with that. Yeah.
Okay. And by the way, I am going to connect with him. I got to set up a time to talk to him. So that's going to happen. But it's your son, right?
Yes. So I have a son named Cruz who's 28. And he's an awesome, man now. I guess I can't call him a kid, but
he's an awesome kid.
He's an awesome kid. But kind of Cruz's story, how Nick and I connected on that last week is I loved, the outreach that Nick was doing with the new shirts, supporting and, fundraising for mental health. And I reached out to him and I said, my son Cruz is very passionate about this. His depression really came to light with us when he was in high school. And since then, he's become a really big advocate. He has a sports podcast. He's Twitter famous. I didn't know that could be a thing, but he is. And so he does a lot of outreach through that. But how his story started was, anyone who knows me knows I'm extremely driven. I'm, work. That's just, kind of my background. And I was in the mortgage industry for like 15 years before I switched over to real estate, owned my own companies, ran secondary markets. And so my kids always saw me very motivated, direct, hardworking, successful. And unbeknownst, I didn't realize how much pressure I was really putting on him. As a child, he was an only child for 8 years until his sister came along. And so when he started having challenges in school and things like that in middle school, my answer was, you just need a tutor. You just need, to study more. You just need this, right? I never slowed down to take the time to maybe look that there was some other cause. And so this just kind of manifested itself and festered for years. And then in high school, still remember the day, sitting at my desk where I got a text message from him that said, I just can't do this anymore. And picking up that cell phone, I thought, what is he talking about? He should be at football practice. And it was a text message of him getting ready to drive his truck into the lake. But he thought enough, and he knew in his heart of hearts, he didn't want to do that. Just like Andrea talked about having those thoughts, he did not want to do that to his family and who loved him. So that started our journey. That would have been 2008. That started our journey of having a child, a teenager who had tried to commit suicide and had several attempts after that. And we did psychological testing. That was my wake up call as a parent of, oh, you can't fix this. Right? All your positive affirmations and all of your tutoring can't fix this. So we found out that he basically had floated all the way through school with ADHD inattentive type, because he was never hyperactive. He was never a discipline problem, had never been sent out of class one time in his life. So he had skated through, right? Because he was a great kid. He was super charming. If you ever met a teacher was like, he could just charm anybody, right? So that was a wake-up call for our family in that, I never looked back to see generationally where the struggles had been, very much like what Brindley talked about. We came from a background, my husband and I both did, full of substance abuse, mental illness, But we just kind of closed the door on that, right? We didn't talk about that. We thought that because we were great parents and we thought one way and we went to church, that those things would not be in our household. So if we fast forward, Cruz did not want to do medicine. He didn't do well with medicine. He went off to college with some accommodations and struggled all through college and had one other suicide attempt that, thank goodness, did not happen. And that was when he actually got the clinical help that he needed. So since then, he has very much been an advocate for it being okay to talk about it. Sorority and fraternity kids don't talk about it. Back then they didn't. He made it okay, right? He put himself out there. And he will tell you that, we openly talk about it now as a family, right? So like, if he's ever having a day, I'm like, hey, text me if you're having a day or if you just want to talk. Very open with his sister. I've also become very open with it. So is my husband. My husband is a retired veteran and he sees a counselor for PTSD, which he would never talk about it when the kids were younger. So for us, it was a whole family epiphany, right? That mental illness is just like our physical illness. Like if we take care of our physical body and we take care of our we make sure we go to our dental cleanings every month, then we should be making sure that we're doing our self-care for our mental health too. So my story really is that for me, being the perfectionist that I have always been, that I have to keep a close eye on myself. This past year, I found out that I have severe TMJ and acid reflux that I didn't even know I had, because guess what? The doctor says that's how I manifest my stress. And so I've had to figure out ways now of keeping to my mode or my morning routine, like Brindley had talked about, getting back to setting boundaries and expectations with clients and business partners. And that's really what I've done to help, maneuver where we're at and hopefully where I can go further in my business. But the focus has really come back to mental health for our entire family the last few years, for sure. I know that was very long, but hopefully I got it all.
That was thank you for telling us that story. I think it's important to realize, kids, he's not a kid now, but when he was a kid, kids experience these things, and we chalk it up to, oh, it's high school, or oh, it's grade school, right? Or oh, whatever it is. And we can't just shoo it away like that. We can't just assume, oh, this is adolescence and that's what's going on. And people don't understand that when you get to that point, I mean, I have never been to that point, thankfully, but when you get to that point, when really there's nothing else that you want to try or live for, that's a very dark place. I can't even imagine what that feels like, for someone to choose. My 8-year-old, well, he's 9 in a couple of weeks, he has Tourette. And with Tourette comes a lot of things, like anxiety, depression, all that stuff. And you think when you're 8 years old, or you're 9 years old, if you tell a 9-year-old last year, hey, how would you like to just stay home for an entire year and not go to school? Wouldn't that be awesome? They'd be like, yeah. But no, it's not awesome when it actually happens, because, climbing on the jungle gyms with his friends, that's his life, right? Like that's what he lives for. And, my wife and I hadn't told anybody this, but this one was a couple months ago. Yeah, like my wife went into his room and he had opened the window and he was about to jump out. Like he just didn't. And, that was horrifying for us, because the Tourette on top of not seeing his friends. And I think that day we weren't playing video games, right? And the video games are everything right now, because it's the only way he can interact with his friends, right? So, you know, when an 8-year-old or a 9-year-old decides that that's what he wants to do, but then obviously he didn't, and said, you know, he was felt so bad and said, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. But, you know, it's sad. It's sad when that happens. And, you know, we're just dealing with it. But, yeah, I don't know. I just wanted to tell that story. But, Carly, to go through that, you know, when it's your child, it's, I feel like it's even harder. You know what I mean? Like, just wondering every day, like, do I need to call him? What's too much? How much is too much to check in? You know what I mean? Like, what do you do? What's the balance?
So I think now we've gotten to a point, probably in the last, probably 4 to 5 years, where I know that he's at a place in his life, and he has a great friend group and has an amazing girlfriend, to where I know he's got this circle of people around him where it's not just me, you know, because as a mom or a dad, you feel like you're the only person, right? You're the only person who can fix your child when they need help. But, you know, I think because I finally, and my husband finally, we let loose of what we thought the stigma was around mental illness, about probably 5 years ago, where it was like, okay, either we can be open with this and it be okay for people to say they're not okay in our household, or either we can say that we lost a child to suicide. So I think, and I hate to make it like a line in the sand like that, but that was basically what it was for us. So it's not a big deal for someone in our household to say, you know, I'm just having a day. Andrea, I grew up with a Southern Baptist father who, you know, you didn't go to counseling. You know, when you're from the deep South, I grew up in North Carolina, you don't tell other people about your problems. Like, my mother was extremely upset with me as an adult when I finally told her that I was in counseling, and she just wanted to make sure I wasn't talking about her. you know, and I mean, I love my mother, don't get me wrong, but when you grow up, right, with that programming, I didn't realize that I had put that programming on my children, and I had to pull it back. And I will say this, it's never too late to pull it back. Absolutely. Yeah.
I agree with that too. And it goes back to that just surrender and acceptance, right? This is reality, and we can either fight reality and lose bad and get real beat up along the way, or we can just accept that this is happening, and let's, you know, not escalate the situation by throwing what we think should be happening into the mix.
So I don't have children of my own, and I'm very blessed and honored to speak locally in schools. And I think what a lot of people, or maybe they did, but what dawned on me was that when the pandemic hit, a lot of kids go to school to escape home.
Yep.
True.
And so we had a lot of kids that were at home. 17% of the youth in America have mental illness. And those are only the ones we know about, that we actually talk about, right? And their parents talk about it, Carly, just to what you said. And so I think it goes back to, we just never know what is happening at home, what's happening behind closed doors. And then also, you know, in the recovery community, we also had a lot of people that suffer from depression, suicidal thoughts, schizophrenia, all of these really serious mental illnesses. I'm a data nerd, so 1 in 5 adults have some type of mental illness. 1 in 20 adults have serious mental illness. So, which is, those numbers are daunting in a way. It is the stigma. We don't talk about it, right? We don't, that's the thing, that we don't talk about it. I love that we're bringing awareness to it today, because like you said, Carly, I mean, I just got chills when you shared that, right? We can talk about it and be open and accept it, or we can deal with the consequences of not doing that, which is great. So.
Yeah, well, and one of the things when I texted Nick the other night, I shared with him, it was Suicide Awareness Day this past year, and Cruz always shares his story on Twitter. You know, and when he did this year, just because his sports podcast kind of blew up last year, I think he has like probably 10,000 more followers. I don't know. But he was overwhelmed and bombarded by direct messages and stories of people reaching out to him. And I remember him like contacting me that night, and he was like, Mama, I don't even know what to do with all these messages. And I'm like, Cruz, I will tell you, you have a certain amount of responsibility in your messaging, and I love what you're doing, but you got to make sure that you funnel these people to help, right? Yeah. And I think the more we share our stories, I shared his story on my social media, and I cannot tell you how many colleagues I had from Keller Williams who direct messaged me and said, oh my God, my son or my daughter either tried or did, commit suicide, and I've never told my story, so I love that we're doing this, because you get strength from other people's stories. And then you also know that you have people who understand where you're coming from, right? There's no judgment. That's one of the things I love about our group here, and most of the people that we're around, is that there's no judgment. Even though we are on social media, and a lot of times you're getting the highlight reel, I feel like we're bringing a sense of realness, right, to the conversation.
Well, I love that you brought that up, because two things. We're all very open about the mental challenges that we face. Every time I mention it on Facebook or Instagram, I instantly get emails and text messages and messages from people saying, thank you so much for posting that. Like, I would never think in a million years that you would be going through those things, because whenever I see you, you're just smiling and happy. And and for the most part, I am happy, right? Because I figured it out. But it's refreshing for people to hear that, because they think I have the perfect life, when it's far from. I mean, my house is a freaking tornado tore through here for the last year, because my kids just decided that every room is theirs except for this one, right? And they're out of control. My wife and I have disagreements and arguments like most people do, and we have everything that everyone goes through. Like when you said you're sharing the highlight reels, 100%. I'm all for posting positivity about your life, but like, if that's all that you go through, then you have no emotion or feeling, right? Because human beings have different emotions that they go through when they're thinking about certain things, or when they get certain types of news. That's why I can't stand it when you have someone go, oh, have a 5-minute funeral and then move on. Like, everybody processes things differently, right? Like, they say, well, the only thing you can control in life is the way you react to things. Right. And right now I'm reacting in a way that I choose to react because this is how it's making me feel. If I decided that nothing bothered me, then I would be a robot, and I'm not a robot. And I've had people say, Nick, if you keep showing that, essentially, if you keep letting people know that you go through different feelings and you're not always positive, people are gonna turn off. They're not gonna want. I don't care. Turn off if you don't like it. If mental health is controversial, then turn off, because I don't want to be. Yeah. I don't want you to be in my circle. This is what I go through. This is the life I'm living, and these are the feelings that go through. This is what my kids are doing. And not everything is rainbows and butterflies. Nothing in the world is rainbows and butterflies.
I think there is so much power in vulnerability. And people ask me that all the time too, Nick. Why do you share that story? Why do you want people to know that you did that horrible thing? Well, first of all, if you Google me, you're going to find it, because my mugshot is all over the internet, right?
I've never Googled you, but yeah, you said.
I mean, a name like Brindley Tucker, you can't really hide, right? And it was like, do I want people to hear the story from me, or do I want them to Google me and make their own conclusions? And the thing is, it wasn't so much about that as much as it was when I was vulnerable and open about my challenges. They no longer owned me. I owned them, because I got to decide what I shared, when I shared it, how I used it, right, Andrea? Like, hearing you, knowing you during that time, and then hearing how your journey has been since then, and now how you're using that time in your life to help others. There's power in that. And you know, I have a best friend who has 4 boys, and she has one child that she has just is hell bent on, I'm not gonna medicate. She finally this week said, why? Like, it's similar situation to you, Carly. Like, what am I trying to prevent here? If this is the help he needs, then I need, as his mother, I need to get him the help.
Well,
yeah, I just want to say one thing. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Andrea.
I was going to say, just in at least exploring that option, right? Maybe that isn't the help he needs. However, if that's an option that hasn't been tried, it's one that probably needs to be considered.
Exactly.
And that, yeah, I love that we're talking about all this. There's, like you said, there's so much power in the vulnerability, and shame is such a catalyst for depression and anxiety. And when we don't share our stories, we keep that shame inside, and it just, especially the OCD brain here, right? I'll just ruminate and I go into that shame hole, and it will drive that depression even faster. And so sharing breaks that power over it. And I'm an open book. If I mean, I'll tell my whole story to whoever wants to hear it, and maybe, you know, to people who don't sometimes, because just but there's power in it, and I appreciate having a platform like this to be able to you know, just take the stigma out.
Somebody put
Yeah, I
in
just
the
want to
chat.
say to people.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. Okay, I just want to say to people watching, I need you to stop doing something for me. Okay, this is what you need to stop doing. You need to stop telling people to work, to exercise more, and to read more, and to go on walks, and to take essential oils when they're feeling like this. You have to stop telling people to do that, right? Like, that is something that we do because it helps, but depression is a legitimate, like, clinical depression is an actual disease in your brain that can't be cured unless you have medication. And then on top of the medication, and it's not even cured with medication. If I miss my Vyvanse for one day, that's the thing with antidepressants. If I miss Vyvanse for 24 hours, I'm right back down to where I was before I took Vyvanse. So on top of the medication, once you get that, and like I said, I'm not a doctor like Brindley said, but you can't cure disease without medication. You can't cure sicknesses without some kind of medication. Just like mental illness, depression, anxiety, those are diseases of the brain. And the medication helps connect certain things in your head that your body can't do on its own. And then once you're feeling good that way, yes, then the exercise and the reading and the meditation and the journaling, that put on top of it helps you stay there as well. But just stop telling people, try this, or rub this oil on your chest, or, you know, listen to this podcast. Just stop doing that, because that alone by itself will not help. And if it does, they were just sad. They weren't clinically depressed. When someone says, my depression was cured, well, you didn't have depression. You were just sad. So there's a difference. I just want everyone to kind of be aware of that next time they're talking to somebody who's going through those types of things, because it can be very, very damaging.
Well, and everyone is different. So I suffer from epilepsy, as I mentioned, and I have to take medication to control my seizures. Yet I also know that if I don't sleep, I drink too much caffeine, or I'm under a high amount of stress, that it doesn't matter how much medication I take, I'm going to go into full seizure that day. So what Nick is saying is so important, is that the medication is there to help, and building those daily habits can also be the ongoing wellness program to even amplify what the medication is doing for you. Because at the end of the day, I am still responsible for me, and it is a choice, right? And I can accept that I have to live with these ailments and with these challenges and these illnesses. And I can also choose whether I'm going to go the healthy route and medicate and do the right things, or if I'm going to go the unhealthy route and medicate in other ways. And so I just want to make sure that I say that if you're out there right now and you're dealing with mental illness, addiction, any of that, you are not alone, and you do not have to be alone. You can reach out to any of us. My cell phone number is 727-512-9098, 727-512-9098. I am here to help you. We are all here to share with you our experience, strength, and hope. You just have to reach out, but you're not alone. And that's just what I want people to hear.
Awesome. And everyone kind of knows how to get in touch with me at this point. So I'm kind of hard to.
Don't call them and try to sell them essential oils.
Yeah, if you're selling essential oils, I don't want to hear from you.
Well, and I was just going to say, I taught a time blocking class in the market center this morning. And, you know, I'm still learning a lot of the agents in my market center because it's a new market center for me. And I made sure that being a leader in the office and teaching is that I taught that component of self-care, giving yourself grace, recognizing what is causing you anxiety and stress that's in your schedule right now, and then how to be able to mitigate that. And I just think that was very important because we are a system. I mean, we're a company of systems and models, but we also have to make sure that we put a little bit of grace in there, so people don't think they're failing, because I feel like a lot of people feel like they're failing right now. And we got to make sure that we're giving them grace as leaders and that they're giving themselves grace.
Carly, it's funny you bring that up because I was talking to a team, the Dan Holt team, the other day, and they had a big aha that when their agents would come to them and say, I got 2 offers accepted, they would say, okay, but you need 5. Where are the other 3? Instead of celebrating the 2 they got. And they had this massive aha, because we're all so frantic right now that we need to make sure, just like you said, that we're celebrating the wins and giving people grace and not so focused on what's not there, and really helping them celebrate more now than ever, because it is very unknown out there, right?
Yeah. Perfect.
I would like to say one other thing that's really worked for me. In this business, we love to read books on leadership, and we love to read books on mindset. And a lot of people will only read those books, right? I just want to say, I'm not telling you not to read those books. What I'm saying is, every other book, read fiction. Like, I was talking to Jay Papasan about this. He said, and he does the same thing. He'll read and this is what he says. He says, I'll read a leadership book and a business book, and then I'll read a juicy thriller. I quote juicy thriller from Jay Papasan, because fiction works your imagination, and it allows you to visualize like a movie in your head, right? And when your mind is working like that, it's so healthy. Like a leadership and mindset book, those are models and rules. There's nothing that's going to be imaginative in your brain, right? But when you read something like, Dark Matter is like the juiciest thriller, and Jay Papasan actually told me to read it. The juiciest thriller I've ever read. Like, I blew through this in like 2 days, right? Like, you just eat it up like it's junk food, and it's so healthy. So like, keep reading those leadership books, but give your brain something to think about and to imagine. And I promise you, that was like the key for 2020 for me, reading fiction. It like changed my whole world.
Nick, I dated a guy whose mother was a reading teacher, and she told me that. She said, you shouldn't read business books all the time. And I said, why? And she said, do you eat chicken every day?
Do you eat what?
Chicken every day? Like, that was the point. Like, your brain has to be stimulated in different ways. So there's, scientific proof to that.
Have to mix it up.
Well, we are just out of time. I appreciate all of you being on. This was super. I learned a lot, and I hope everyone watching, got some ideas on what they can do to help themselves, and maybe people who have been struggling and didn't know what was wrong, maybe this gave them some insight. So we appreciate you being here. I'm Nick Baldwin, Andrea Madison, Carly Oxenrider, Brindley Tugger. Thank you so much. You guys were super transparent, and we appreciate that. check on your strong friends, everybody, because they're the ones that are at the top and it's lonely up there. And so checking in and just a little text saying, how are you? That could really like change someone's life, like honestly. So thanks everyone. We'll see you next time.
Bye.